Sales and operations planning is the topic this week, and how has it changed pre-COVID to post-COVID? This week, we're talking to one of our experts in S&OP, Stephen Thacker, and that's coming right up. So the topic this week is S&OP, and with me this week, we have Stephen Thacker, who's one of our directors here at Logistics Bureau. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, thank you, Rob. Good to catch up again.
And Stephen, amongst other things, is a bit of an expert on sales and operations planning. So the question for you, Stephen, is how has S&OP changed pre-COVID and post-COVID, or has it?
Yeah, the second part's a good question too. It absolutely has and changed quite radically. So S&OP, as you know, has been around for an awfully long time now, for 50 or so years, and was conceived during a time when there was much more stability, both on the demand side and also on the supply side. It doesn't exist today. We have massive variability on both sides of the equation. And the one thing that has really changed noticeably and very painfully, I'm afraid, in S&OP planning post-COVID and certainly during COVID, is that we never used to have to worry too much about constrained supply. We would produce a demand plan, which is what sales and marketing were looking and forecasting to require to sell by SKU, by location. And then we produced a supply plan against that. And to be quite frank, most supply planners would have done that on the basis of one pass, one iteration. And the reason they were able to was because suppliers were delivering pretty much close to in full and on time. But of course, that doesn't exist anymore. Now we have suppliers that can't deliver because they can't get the raw materials to manufacture, or because their manufacturing facilities, for example, during COVID were closed, a number in China for 2 weeks out of 4 during a month. So we would produce a supply plan, for example, saying that I need 10,000. I need to find the suppliers were coming back saying, well, that's nice, but we can only produce a half of that. And then there were shipping delays. So we had this huge variability, even if we got the 10,000 or at least ordered the 10,000, whether it would actually arrive. And if it did, whether it would arrive in the purchase order sequence that we presented it. So what has changed dramatically is this concept of supply planning and doing constrained supply plans, which, as I say, supply planners really didn't have to think about too much in the past. So that increase in variability on the demand side, coupled with increased variability on the supply side, means that our supply planners are stretched now. And the consequence of that is that a lot of companies that we're dealing with are saying that they are finding it difficult to complete the supply plan in the allocated time frame during the month, because it's just not so simple anymore.
So what's the answer?
The
audience is watching this going,
well,
I get that. What's the answer, Stephen?
The answer here, of course, is that you've either got to have a magic wand, or you have to really now adapt your process. So we're assuming, of course, that this variability is not going to change in the super near future. So therefore, how do we adapt? And the adaptation is in ensuring that this happens. Number one, that supply planners understand that their workload and the demand on them has increased, and we're therefore looking to support them as a business and to give them more resources. A business analyst, for example, that could be allocated to assist in the supply planning phase. Secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, is that there's a need to produce that constrained supply plan, hand it over to sales, get them to adjust their demand plan, and then come back to supply to recut the supply plan a second time. What we can't have happen, and unfortunately what has been happening because of time constraints and time pressures, is that the supply planners are deciding basically who gets the stock and who misses out. S&OP doesn't work in that world because the accountability is lost, so therefore sales have to be involved. And therefore we need them almost on standby during the 3rd week of the month, knowing that they're going to get a constrained supply plan to then recut a demand plan back to sales, as back to supply, to be able to then recut the plan. So that's the key. It's a matter of everybody understanding that the rules have changed, the involvement levels, the engagement levels have changed, and being able to compensate for that, knowing that this turnaround has got to happen in a very short period of time.
Great, thanks for that, Steve. No, it's not something that I would immediately have thought of. So if you're watching this, have you had those sort of issues? Are your supply planners a little bit challenged at the moment? And how have you tackled it? Maybe comment down below. We'd love to see your feedback. And I think this is a really serious topic. We're going to have some more conversations about this, Stephen. So let's see what we can conjure up in the following weeks. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.